That was where one of the greatest concentrations of confrontations were happening. In fact, behind us here, we are here at 4th and Stewart, where there has been an ongoing standoff for about the past, I would say, half hour. This is sort of the outside periphery of this whole protest situation. You have folks exiting, essentially, the main areas of protest, but there has been quite a great deal of tear gas. It's a large stun grenade, obviously, going off. People appear to be have become inured to the sounds. We're just ducking into the doorway of a business.
We can't move.
When the tear gas hit 6th and Pike, some had nowhere to run.
Committed to not moving no matter what tactics they take.
In the middle of 6th and Pike, they sat chained together with pipes and bike locks linked by their opposition to the World Trade Organization.
We're here to shut down the WTO.
Much of that anger directed not just at the WTO, but also police.
Oh, passive crowd. You're a passive crowd doing nothing, and you're going to have a riot on your hands because you're idiots.
And I got shot by the state with a rubber bullet.
This man says he was hit by a rubber bullet that police were firing.
And I just felt like I just got shot for fairness. They had to use violence to enforce their policies.
Protesters thought ahead with dozens of first aid responders.
I've got food and water and a hot thermos of tea.
And while a Korean farmer protest provided the beat, Osha Newman, an attorney, was there at 6th and Pike to see the law was followed.
Monitoring what happens, being able to report what happens if there's police, excessive force.
They're not meeting today.
Whether or not this protest at 6th and Pike succeeds in truly shutting down the WTO, for many of them, this was a victory in itself. Sunrise on the Mekong Delta, south of Saigon, a thriving part of the world that could not survive without this river, the Mekong, Vietnam's lifeline. Starting at 15,000 feet in China's Tibetan mountains, the Mekong flows for more than 2,600 miles through 6 countries, finally reaching Vietnam before emptying into the South China Sea. For thousands of years, the Mekong has fed its people, given up its fish, flooded its rice fields. The harvest even sells on the river in this floating market 150 miles south of Saigon. Here you can buy whatever you need, from fresh banana cakes to oranges to cucumbers, and never leave your boat. Through centuries of war, the Mekong's lush jungles have also hidden the enemy. The river is perhaps best known for the defoliants called Agent Orange that American forces sprayed to expose North Vietnam soldiers. Despite dumping 11 million gallons of the chemicals, the same volume as the Exxon Valdez oil spill, the American war strategy failed. The North Vietnamese won, and the Mekong flows on. So does the debate over whether or not Agent Orange has had any lasting environmental effect at all on the Delta. It's been more than 20 years since the U.S. military sprayed Agent Orange on hundreds of canals like this one in the Mekong River Delta. But today, there are new concerns about this river and its future. Southeast Asia is home to the fastest growing economies in the world, countries desperate to catch up. And the 6 Asian nations that own a piece of the Mekong are looking to the river for help. They're all planning billions of dollars in massive dam and irrigation projects. Laos alone wants to build 58 separate dams on the Mekong. The question now asked by those whose lives depend on this river, what will happen to us? Environmentalists say the Mekong's developers must look to the Western world for their lessons. It was hydroelectric dams sold as progress that devastated the Columbia River's salmon runs, cutting the world's largest annual migration of salmon by 70%.
We consider the Mekong River water is like an elixir of life.
An elixir?
Yes. We were born here and we do everything in the water.
Zovan Tuan is an environmental scientist at Kuntur University in the middle of the Delta.
It has been threatened by man-made projects, man-made ideas. And most of these man-made ideas have been shaped up by the leaders or by the planners without much consultation with the users, as is the farmers.
The people of the Mekong fear development will destroy their fragile ecosystem, a balance perfected through the centuries. Damming the river's flow could bring in crop-killing salt water from the South China Sea. Flooding the Mekong to boost agriculture could wipe out some of the 1,000 species of fish in the river.
If we don't stop, or we don't regulate this, or if we don't develop sustainably, I think we will come to the point that we will lose a lot of land, a lot of money, and we will be bankrupt.
For now, Chuan says the Mekong's strong flushing action saves it from pollution, but the plans by the river-owning countries could increase that threat. And with no public hearings in communist Vietnam, no environmental impact statements, who will speak for the Mekong and the millions of people who live on it?
I think my greatest concern is for the people here.
Patricia Cummings is an environmental lawyer who recently moved to the Mekong Delta from San Rafael, California. Cummings spent much of her college years protesting the Vietnam War. Now she has a new cause.
We're not at war with these people, and now is an opportunity to come together in a way that's meaningful for the present time.
She started the Mekong River Foundation, dedicated to sounding the alarm around the world about threats to the river.
I think the environmental community is asking the River Commission and the agencies, the big UN, ADB, Asian Development Bank, World Bank, the aid community that's funding these things to take another look at this and see if, in fact, the millions of people who live on this watershed are going to be benefited by it, and whether Bangkok needs that electricity from that source or are there other sources.
The source of life here is the river. Many families in the Delta spend nearly their entire lives on or in the water. It is these images that drove Patricia Cummings to try to save the treasure that is the Mekong.
Everything goes in the river. Everything from whatever these people in the boats throw out of their boat to all the industrial waste upstream there. There's a detergent manufacturing plant, and beyond that there's a pesticide plant. There's no waste controls for these things. Everything goes into the river. You know what environmental laws are? They're an agreement between people in a society that I'm not going to take advantage of you. I'm not going to do something and make my money and make you unhealthy.
And as the world takes more from the Mekong, asks the river to make good on its promises, this mother of waters continues to care for its family. The question is, for how long? Today, Vietnam is a country, not a war. If you want to understand where Vietnam is today, forget everything you know.
First thing out, you got a cougar.
If you can put aside these images, the pain and suffering and death, the colossal failure of U.S. foreign policy, you will do what the Vietnamese have done for the last 20 years. Although the Vietnamese people may never forget the horror visited upon their country, today Vietnam is filled with the images of forgiveness. You may not believe it at first. How can these people let go of the past? Where is the anger? And why are these people smiling at Americans of all people? The truth is, the same indomitable spirit that repelled invaders for thousands of years, including the most powerful country on earth, that same spirit is now channeled into rebuilding and moving on. But even though the war is long over, Vietnam is still undeniably a third world country. There's a lot of ground to make up, and Vietnam's people are still suffering. Yet this is what surprises the visitor to Vietnam. The war is over, and Vietnam is starting to walk on its own, beginning to develop an identity beyond the one forged by necessity and battle. And the lesson in Vietnam today is, if we can't forget, perhaps we can forgive. Because today, Vietnam is a country, not a war.